you guys waiting for?
The seminar.
Yeah. Mark Bell, Silent Mike.
Yeah, where is Mark Bell?
Yeah, where is Mark Bell? That's what we're all wondering. Where's Mark Bell?
I don't know. Where's Mark Bell?
That's the question of the night, apparently.
Is that guy who you guys are waiting for?
I heard there was going to be lasagna. That's why I'm here.
What's that?
I heard there was going to be lasagna.
What's up? Waiting on Smelly. He's a celebrity now, you know. He's on his own time.
Not sure what all the fuss is about. All right. Let's kick this thing off here. Here we go. First off, I want to thank all you guys for making it out to this awesome fucking gym. C-Bus Lifting Company. Pretty damn cool spot to be. I appreciate everybody making the effort to get here. Those people on Instagram and stuff that make excuses on why they're not here. Oh man, I have to work and I have to do this, I have to do that. I'm glad that you guys didn't use an excuse. You didn't allow anything to get in your way of learning more and becoming more betterist and working towards being as good as you possibly can be. It's real easy to make excuses on why you're not doing something. It's very easy to talk yourself out of stuff. If you think about it, before you go to bed, almost every night, there's 4 or 5 things that you think that you're going to do the next day. And most of the time, you wake up the next day, and before you had your first cup of caffeine and kilos coffee, you've already talked yourself, yeah, $5. You've already talked yourself out of doing all the shit that you committed yourself to doing the night before. So you got to make sure that you stay on task and you stay on point. And most of the seminar, I'm going to probably keep referring to that. I'm also going to keep referring repeatedly over and over again that it's important that you surround yourself with people that want to get better. It's also important that you not only do that, but you seek out people that are better than you. It's fun to be on top of the leaderboard, but you'll only be on top of the leaderboard in your gym. You won't be able to really succeed beyond that unless you go out and seek stronger people, seek people that are better than you. Recently had someone ask me a question, do you think somebody would deadlift more if they thought the all-time world record was 2,000 pounds? And that's a crazy question, and it's kind of weird in some ways, but the answer is yes, they would, because they wouldn't think there's a limitation on what they're doing. And so like if Silent Mike comes to me and says, I want to deadlift 700 pounds, I'm not like, shit, man, that's going to be hard. You're supposed to be natty. You might have to not be natty anymore. It's going to be hard, right? It's going to be a hard road, but I've seen it before. I've seen guys in my gym pull 700 pounds. I've seen people pull 800 pounds. I've seen people do 900 pounds. And recently, Brian Shaw, the 3-time world's strongest man champion, recently he pulled 1,000 pounds. So what is possible? Why put limitations on your own lifts? You can't squat over 350 because you're a female. I've seen females squat 400 pounds. I've seen females squat 500 pounds. I've seen females nearly deadlift 600 pounds. There's a couple girls right now that are knocking on the door of a 600-pound deadlift. Just absolutely insane. There's no reason to put any limitations on your own training. You can't lift because you're too old. You can't lift because you're too short. You can't lift because you're too fat. Well, too fat's highly beneficial, so we'll leave that one out of there. But I hear people all the time, oh, my arms are short, so I can't deadlift. Or my hands are small, I lose my grip on the deadlift all the time. You can sit there and whine and bitch about whatever it is you want to make an excuse. But again, you're just simply talking yourself out of doing what you're supposed to do. You're giving yourself an out. You're giving yourself a little bit of an exit, a little bit of a reason on why you can't do something. So it's important that you surround yourself with people that want to get better, people that have desire, people that have hopes and dreams of continuing to get better, not just inside the gym. Try not to hang around too many knuckleheads that all they care about is the fucking gym all the time. You want to try to get around people that are good people in lifting, in the gym, and they're good people outside the gym as well. Because all that's going to rub off on you. So, as I always say, if you walk with the lame, you will carry a limp. So you want to try to walk with people that have similar goals. You want to try to walk with people that want to get better. You want to try to walk with people that want to see you improve as well. And you'll chase after each other. If you think about some of your best workouts or some of your best practices in football, basketball, whatever sport of choice you played, A lot of times it's because you're thinking about what so-and-so did, and you're trying to be better. You're trying to match what they did. If someone rips up a 500-pound deadlift, it's going to make you want to succeed and get to that 500-pound deadlift as well. If you're lifting with somebody that consistently kicks your ass, maybe you win by having them kick your ass a little bit less that day. Maybe you win by staying within 50 pounds rather than always getting beat by 75 pounds. So I like to run with guys like Silent Mike because Silent Mike is young, he's hungry, he wants to get better, and he knows how to dance. That last part's actually the main reason why he's here. I'm gonna let Silent Mike talk for a couple minutes, let him get the floor, talk about whatever you want.
Mark works very hard in a lot of ways. Mark is maybe a gifted bencher in a lot of ways, but he's not any more special than any of you other than he's a doer. The story of super training kind of goes, Mark moved to California with his wife and kids. He needed to train. He wanted to squat 1,000 pounds. He wanted to bench over 800. Well, how's he gonna do it? Well, he just created a gym. He just did it. I think the first gym was in the back of a dumpster next to a Chinese church with dead animals everywhere.
Let's not be racist, it was Hmong.
And then from there, he got to a bigger space. And from there, he moved into a strength and conditioning facility where maybe he had 800 square feet. And now he has his own podcast, he has his own company. We have a 6,500 square, it's been a long day, 6,500 square foot facility where he can do whatever the hell he wants. And that's not because he was born with $100 million. That's not because he has anything different, but he had a goal and he took step by step to get there. I'm lucky enough to be able to train with him. I was probably like many of you just working out at a 24-hour fitness type facility, making some progress, doing okay, benching 315 24-hour fitness world records. I was the strongest bencher in the whole damn gym. But I wanted more, I wanted to get better. I didn't want to just be complacent with being okay. I know I'm not going to be a world record holder, but the whole reason we do any of this is it's the most basic form of self-improvement. We can read all these books, we can do all these things, but until you apply everything, apply every single day, we're making ourselves better inside the gym, outside the gym, whether it's business, family, whatever it might be, step by step, then you're going to get there. And so I found myself lucky enough to get a mentor like Mark. But that's not to say that right here, Brett Gibbs, one of the strongest guys in the world. You may or may not know of him. He moved across the freaking country to get an awesome partner in Josh Hancott, one of the other strongest guys in the world. These kids are both studs. They're both under 26 years old. And they do what they can to get around like-minded people. I think they may even have a business together. They're working together. That's more commitment than me. I only drive half an hour to hang out with Mark. But the point is, if you want to get something, all you have to do is do it, you know?
Did they say that they're partners, but they don't have a business together?
I was talking to Brett.
Because that would be weird.
He's trying to be Canadian. I told him just to get married.
I mean, it is 2016. You do what you got to do, I guess. You can always move to California. We'll accept you. Find motivation and find inspiration. It's all around you. It surrounds you each and every day. It doesn't have to come from somebody lifting. Open your eyes. Pay attention to what's going on around you. Try to put time into other people as well. If you're only putting time into yourself, you're not going to get the rewards that you're looking for. You may get better, you may get stronger, but you're going to feel so much better if you put some time and some effort into other people. I put time and effort into guys like Mike and other guys in my gym because I want them to kick my ass. I want them to do better than me. I want them to try to beat some of the lifts that I've done, and many of them have. The last meet, Filipino Thunder, Marcus, he beat my total, and I told him before he did his last deadlift, I said, you're going to beat me with this last deadlift. Go out there and fucking get it. And he pulled it up, and I have goosebumps thinking about it right now because that got me fired up. I'm like, I'm retired, but maybe I'll come back out of retirement to try to kick this motherfucker's ass, right? Rather than like hating on somebody, you see a lift on YouTube or you see something on Instagram, rather than being a miserable, hateful bastard, why not support that a little bit? Why not get behind that a little bit? Or why not just even think, well, that's cool for them. Maybe it's not your cup of tea. Maybe they didn't do the lift to your liking or whatever. But just realize there's inspiration and there's motivation all around you each and every day. And that if you simply grasp the fact that being great is a simple act of being good for a long period of time, then you will always be ahead of everyone. Just think about that. Think about that again, what I just said. Being great is not about being, like Michael Jordan is considered great, but why is he great? Did he score 60 points in one game? Did he score, did he get 10 rebounds in one game? Did he win one playoff game? Did he only win one championship? No, he consistently kicked ass for a really long period of time. And that's why he's considered the greatest basketball player of all time. Look at I don't know how much basketball you guys follow, but I like the sport a lot. Look at Stephen Curry. He's dominating the NBA right now. Can you just automatically say that he's great? Maybe not yet. You can't really put him in a category as like Larry Bird and Magic Johnson, only the simple fact that he just hasn't been doing it quite long enough yet. He already has some records. He already has a championship ring. The point is, if you guys stop thinking about being great, which is on everybody's mind or on a lot of people's mind all the time, being great or trying to be great is maddening and it's not satisfying. And I've got caught up in that loop myself many times, and it fucking sucks. It's a miserable spot to be in. You don't want to end up there. You become too entrenched in what you're doing, and you lose sight of some of the original goals. Where does lifting start? Does anybody know? Like your choice to lift. Does anybody know where it starts? It starts between your fucking ears. It starts in your brain. It starts in your head. A conscious decision for you to go and work out and you to go to exercise. Maybe it's because you wanted chicks. Maybe it's because you want some biceps. Well, I guess biceps and chicks go hand in hand, let's face it. Maybe you just wanted to be stronger for a sport. Maybe somebody punted your football into the woods, your favorite football, and you never got it back. There's all kinds of different reasons on why you might start exercising or why you might start getting into something. But for today, I want you guys to really try to keep in mind that you're only trying to get a little bit better each day. There's no reason for you to there's no reason for you guys to think about, oh, so-and-so deadlifted 700, I'll never get there. You'll get there by deadlifting 500, and you'll get there by deadlifting 525, and so on. It may be slow, it might take you a while, but where will you be if you're smart, you stay healthy, and you're still lifting 10 more years from now? That's what you got to try to embrace. That's what you got to try to think about when you're going into the gym, when you're going after some of those big lifts. You think like, oh shit, this lift might actually kill me. You might want to reconsider. You might want to be a little smarter about it. Maybe you're not always chasing after those maxes. Some people prefer that style of training. Some people get better with submaximal weights. It all kind of depends on the person. But you have to go through the grind each and every day and make sure, as I mentioned earlier, make sure you're practicing, trying to be good every single day, trying to complete some of the tasks that you laid out in front of yourself, not just in the gym, inside and outside the gym. A real easy task of what I want everyone to do from now on till the day they keel over, which for me would probably be tomorrow. I'll probably have a heart attack during the Arnold. There'll be so many goddamn people there. But I'd like you guys to do is just think of 3 things every day that you want to accomplish. Maybe even write them down and just make sure they get done. Could be anything. Could be going to the bank. Can't be taking a shit because I take a lot of those. It could be anything that's pressing, anything that you haven't done. You know, renewing your driver's license, all these stupid things that happen every day. Whatever it is, just make sure that you're following through on those tasks each and every day. Because below average people that don't ever get ahead, they're constantly behind a little bit because they're not doing the shit that they're supposed to do when they're supposed to do it. It's that simple. It seems more complicated than that, but you can really lay it out and have it be that simple. What we're going to do first, we're going to do some deadlift demonstrations. So I have somebody grab a barbell and somebody just slap some 45s on it and we'll stick the bar right here. What I'd also like everyone to keep in mind for today is any of the information that I share with you today, anything that you retain, you're going to forget about 80% of this probably. Doesn't that suck? That's like looking at that little black pen in Men in Black. You're going to forget a lot of this shit, but the stuff that you do grasp, the stuff that you do hold on to, share it with other people. Get other people involved in the sport. We need more people involved in the sport. We need more help. We need more judges. We need more spotters. We need more loaders. A lot of times people will complain to us and say, oh, there's no powerlifting meets around here. Well, there's probably no powerlifting meets around in that area because you're not supporting them. Or if you're that frustrated with it, maybe you put some on yourself. Maybe we have a powerlifting meet right inside this gym. Just try to think about that. The sport, it always needs more people. It always needs to grow. And if you're nice to people and you're passing along information and you're being positive, that'll be a good reflection on the sport itself. So Silent Mike's going to do a conventional deadlift. First thing you want to do is try to line yourself up on the bar properly. You don't want to be too far away from the bar. You don't want to be too close to the bar. You want to be somewhere in between. How close you get to the bar is determined by your mobility and how big you are. If you have a bigger belly, odds are you might need more room. Holy crap, that's a lot of pizza. If you have a bigger belly, you might need to step away from the barbell a little bit, or you're not very mobile. But for most people, they're just going to try to have the barbell right over like mid part of their foot, and sometimes even just slightly a little closer to the shins than that. A couple things we're trying to do when we do a deadlift, just to keep it really simple. We're trying to keep our back flat. Keep in mind, really pay attention to the words I'm saying. We're trying to keep our back flat. I'm not saying that you have to do every deadlift perfectly with a flat back, but the intention, the goal is to try to keep your back flat. We don't want to overload the spine in compromised positions. We want to try to work on good positions. We want to try to work on keeping good form with even the heavier weights. So we're trying to keep our back flat. The second thing that we're going to do is we're going to try to drop our hips lower than our shoulders. That is pretty much it. There's a little more. Oh, there's a little more. Let's see. I'll make one up. Keep your stomach tight.
There's 3, and?
There's a fourth one. Oh, the most important one, and no one will be able to follow this rule, I don't think.
World record holders probably don't know this one. These
Yeah,
guys
he might not know.
well over 600. They don't know this.
Maybe we shouldn't share it. This shouldn't be free. The last thing is try not to shit your pants. So again, try. Like, it doesn't mean you're always successful, right?
Shit happens.
Shit happens. Shit happens. So we're trying to keep our stomach tight. We're trying to keep our back flat. We're trying to get our hips lower than our shoulders. Some of those things are not that hard, with the exception of the fourth one. Some of those things are not that hard to achieve. No matter how poor flexibility you have, no matter how you're built, everyone should be able to execute that without any problems. If you do have a problem with it, then maybe you need to deadlift off an elevated surface for a little while, have the barbell on some blocks or something like that until you can get further range of motion. You see the back's flat, driving his legs through the floor. You're trying to actually sort of press your legs into the floor, and once the weight is initiated off the ground and once it gets to about mid-shin, you're trying to pull the weight into you and flex your butt. You can kind of protect your back by flexing your butt. As soon as the bar gets to about your kneecap, maybe even a little bit lower than your kneecap, by forcefully driving your hips forward and flexing your butt, you can successfully help protect your lower back because your body will be at a good angle throughout the entire movement. We get a lot of questions about, how do you stop from getting so rounded over in a deadlift, or how do you stop from the deadlift becoming a two-part lift? I think most of you are familiar with the way that this looks. Hips shoot up first, then the barbell leaves the floor. So when the hips shoot up, they start to get higher than the shoulders, which is something we're trying to avoid. You also start to get that kind of fishing pole look to your back where everything's just rounded over like crazy. The best way to avoid that, well, there's two best ways to avoid that. Number one is to use sub-maximal weights, meaning that you're probably training somewhere in the neighborhood, and it just can vary a little bit for each person. You're probably training somewhere in the neighborhood of 75 to about 90%, give or take 5% on that. You can't work on execution. Well, you can, but it's hard to work on your execution when you have 95%, 97%, and 100% of your max on the bar. It's just really hard. It's hard to maintain. All we're trying to do as powerlifters, we're trying to maintain a position that we kind of agree upon to try to stay in throughout the entire range of motion. That's all you're really trying to do. You're just trying to literally fight for positioning. You're trying to get yourself into such a good position and so tight that you maintain that position throughout the entire range of motion. We're going to show a little bit of
This gross guy do it.
sumo deadlifting. He's taking his clothes off. Look at those fancy boots. Is that kangaroo? Yeah. Kangaroo leather? Yes, let's see some sumo with fancy pants sumo deadlifts. That's what these are officially called. So again, the same rules apply. There's not too many different things. Obviously, the look of it looks different. The range of motion is shortened a little bit. How you figure out if this style of deadlift fits you is as simple as trying it. And if you lift more this way and feel better this way, then use that way. That's pretty simple. Like if you're going to go into a competition and you feel better this way, you feel like you'll be more competitive this way, then go with this style. It's not cheating. I know there's a lot of rumors on the internet whether sumo deadlift is cheating or not, but it's not cheating. We are shortening up the range of motion a little bit, but the sumo deadlift typically for most people is a little slower off the ground and it's a little easier on the lockout. And the conventional deadlift is sort of the reverse of that for most people. Everyone's a little different. So similar rules. Back is still, he's going to keep his stomach tight, back is flat, hips are lower than his shoulders. And what you're going to notice here is that his hips are considerably lower than his shoulders due to the style. What you're also going to notice with this particular lift is a pretty vertical shin angle. The shin is straight up and down. The knees are not coming forward of the barbell hardly at all. They can come forward slightly, but it's definitely not going to look like a conventional deadlift where you get more knee bend in there. Do a few more. I want you guys to stop for a second. Yep. Just like you can let go. I want you guys to really see the positioning that he's doing. I want everyone to kind of see. I want everyone to see how he's rounding his back, and then he's utilizing the barbell to get himself tight. He's connected to the barbell throughout the entire range of motion. And this is just 135 pounds, but he's still making sure everything's right. It doesn't matter what the weight is. You want to always try to have your form be as perfect as you can make it. So he's starting with a rounded back, and then he's going into a flat back position by pulling himself downward with the barbell. Try not to fart. Lots of cameras here.
All right. I won't shit myself.
Back's rounded, back's flat. Somebody grab 5 pounds. We'll stick. I think you can go up a little bit. Yeah. Go to 145. What's your best deadlift in the competition?
600 exactly.
Damn. At what? 181.
163.
Holy shit. 600-pound deadlift at 163 pounds. I was kidding.
when you say it.
Hey, it's nice to know I can get ladies to do something for me. I still got it. Let's have Mr. Gibbs here, since he's here, show us a little bit of his form. Talk for us, too. We want to hear that funny accent.
Pretty much all I look at when I'm trying to deadlift is just first I always make sure
Hold on. Can you speak English? No one, does anybody here speak Australian?
I'm Australian now, apparently. So the first thing I do when I think about a conventional deadlift is when we're obviously trying to build technique, we're going to make sure we have consistency. So we start from before the bar, so how we approach the bar, that's always the first thing I like to do. So if anyone's ever seen any of my videos, I'm always going to put my left foot first, and I'm going to look over it just to see where it is in relation to the bar. So
that's a really good point he brings up. He's basically saying he's got a routine. He does the same thing every time. Yeah. The way that you sit on the bench press, the way that you grab the bar, the way that you put your foot forward, it should be the same every time, so that no matter what competition you go to or where you go to, the elements are basically the same, because all the steps and all the movements that he does, he's in control of. Yeah. He's not in control of whether the lights are super bright or whether the barbell's different or any of that. He's in control of himself, so he develops a routine for his squat, bench, and deadlift that he sticks to all the time.
Yeah. So again, it's just increasing specificity. So whenever someone thinks about the deadlift, they might just think about their 1 RM, but it's going beyond that, making ourselves better and better by bringing that specificity into how we set up, how we approach the bar, so making it the same every time. So the first thing I'm doing, like Mark said earlier, about foot position, so how much forward knee travel we may have for the conventional deadlift. For me, I just look right over the middle of the foot. So the way I do that, like I said, is I always place my left foot first. I have a look over and I'm happy with that. I'm always straight forward, so I don't have my feet out to the side. it's just straightforward for
That's
me.
a preference for some people. Like
Yep.
again, if you have to squat down quite a bit, then maybe your foot should be pointed outward a little bit, just to make more room so you don't shove the barbell forward when you go to squat down.
Yeah. Now some people may have problems with forward knee travel. They're going to come forward and hit the bar. So it's obviously when you can stand a little bit further away from it. But what I tend to do is just I think about a little bit of externally rotating that knee, so ever so slightly, just turning this knee out before I actually bring my next foot through. And this is going to help engage my glutes. So this is going to get them firing before I even get into position. It's going to help with my shin angle as well. Okay, so I'm not going to let them travel forward like this. I almost want them to be just slightly out. Okay, then I'm going to do the same thing with my next foot. So I'm just going to bring this forward. And once I'm happy with that position again, I'm just going to slightly bring my knees out. You're going to feel my glutes come on. Okay?
You want me to film?
No?
Huh?
Now the next bit obviously is just thinking about, well, what I think about personally is just pushing my glutes back and making sure I'm hinging through the hips. Okay, and I want to keep a nice neutral spine from the word go. So from as soon as I...
Hinging from the hips is basically bending over from the hips.
Yeah.
Make sure we're all on the same page.
Yeah, just
page 43. Page 43.
The thing I think about too is not actually just falling right over the bar. It's actually pushing the glutes back and making sure we're keeping nice and tight through our core. Okay. So again, setting up, knowing where my hands want to be. So most people who are in the smaller weight classes should have their hands straight up and down. It obviously shortens the range of motion. The wider you have your hands for some bigger people, obviously means you're going to lift the bar a bit higher, and it puts a bit more tension, especially through the upper back. Like if any of the lighter people have tried snatch, grip, deadlift, we obviously know how much harder they are. We have to pull the weight further, we have to bend down further to pick the bar up. So I'm always looking for the first part of the knurling. Okay, so that's the first thing I'm looking to do. Now some people, I've noticed they have a big tendency to have a bit of tilt through the hips. They get their lower backs really dominant, and they find it really hard to get their back neutral. So I'm a little bit like that too. My lower back was very dominant through my early years of lifting. So one big thing I noticed, big thing I changed, was the breathing and the position I use to change my hips and engage my core before I even bend down to actually pick the bar up. So increasing that intra-abdominal pressure before I even pick the bar up. I don't have the time to try and build pressure or take that breath when I'm already at the bar. So I found that my personal preference is to take that air before I actually go down and, like I said, pick the bar up. Okay, so that bit I talked about earlier, if I'm standing up here like this and I've got a bit of tilt through my hips, has anyone experienced that before? Like where they sort of just have a lot of lower back dominance and they don't really know how to engage their core at the same time if they're in too much of a tilt. So what I do is I actually almost like, what am I doing? Almost
Pop
like
that thing, I think is the word.
What's that?
Pop that thing.
Pop
I think
that
that's what
thing.
you're doing, buddy.
So I'm basically just bringing my hips further under me and making sure I'm squeezing my glutes in here. So I'm tilting my hips, and this is going to engage my core as well. You know, it's a big change in position through the spine. It's going to sort of stop that natural curvature through the bottom that can sometimes be over-exaggerated for a tight through our hip flexors or quads. So making sure I bring that into position.
Do you do that with the squat as well?
Do I do that with the squat?
Or just for the deadlift?
Yeah, I try and do that through the squat, but it's a little bit harder because that's preloaded.
Yeah, you're pushing your stomach inward a little bit.
Yeah,
almost like flexing your lower abdominal, but it's kind of hard to like pinpoint exactly.
Yeah. And you'll notice that this might put you just into a slight forward lean position. So I'll be slightly over the bar like this, which is just exactly where I want to be. So this is now where I take my breath. So if I think about if I had a belt on, I'm breathing it all through my chest, but I'm pushing it all down through my belt. Okay, and then the next bit I do is I take it just a bit of a practice tip, so make sure I know I want my hands, and then I'll take my breath, go down, I should be in a good position here, and just really exaggerate the hips coming through. That's one of the biggest changes I've made for my deadlift, is making sure I'm activating the glutes before I get under the bar, before I start picking up the bar, and you're going to notice your hips come through a lot stronger, and that lockout is no longer that laggy, sort of rounded flex position. It's more of a constant one movement that seems to work really well.
What's your best deadlift in the competition?
I don't know, 310 kilo.
That's like 7 something, right?
No, it's 683.
It'll be 16.
Conventional or sumo?
Conventional.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, there's some deadlifting tips from one of the best in the game. For free. Not bad. What else should we do? Got any ideas?
We can do bench.
I'll just kind of point out some things that I see in the bench press, common mistakes that I see. Number one is I see a lot of times people will try to unrack the weight very forcefully, and they'll put their shoulders in a kind of a compromised position. Hopefully by now you guys have kind of heard some of the different cues of pulling your shoulder blades back, having your chest up in the bench press. When you get down on the bench and you grab the bar, you want to try to arch up a little bit. For myself, I only arch my upper back. I don't really bother to do anything with the lower back. The lower back is automatically arched when you lay down to bench press. It's just kind of the nature of it. The bench press, by the way, is the worst of the three lifts in terms of safety. Deadlift is great because you can just kind of drop it. A squat can be dangerous sometimes, but in my opinion, the bench press, the human body's designed to handle something like a squat. The human body's designed to handle something like a deadlift. I don't think we're designed to handle bench pressing very well with all that weight on your body, with both arms pinned behind your back, and then also that weird compromised position of your lower back. It just gets to be quite awkward. But not too much focus on arching the lower back. I personally prefer to wear a belt, again, just because the bench press is a retarded exercise. Even though I'm good at it, I recognize that that's a weird one, and it's most damaging of the three. I even think it's the most damaging of the three on the lower back. Again, that's why I prefer to wear a lifting belt. Some real key elements to the bench press are that you keep your shoulder blades back and that you're trying to pull your chest up. So we can take an exercise that it's a little funky, we can take an exercise that maybe isn't the safest, and we can make it more safe by simply just bringing our elbows into our side a little bit, pulling the rib cage up a little bit. As you bring the weight down, you want to try to kind of pretend that you're bending the bar. As you go to push the weight back up, you want to try to spread the bar apart. So your elbows are going to come in slightly, and they're going to go back out. As you go to press the weight back up, the weight should be over your upper chest / almost all the way by your neck. Where you start with the weight should be a little bit lower. You're going to start over the biggest portion of your body, the thickest portion of your body. That will vary for each person due to the way that they arch. So someone who has a huge arch might look a little different than someone who's not arching much at all. But the idea and the principle is similar when you start to talk about a squat, a bench, and a deadlift. All three of those movements, we're trying to kind of pin our shoulder blades back. Even when you go to set up for a squat, you're trying to almost do a little bit of a lat pull down type of movement and also kind of pop your chest up so the bar's got a really good spot to rest on. When we're doing a deadlift, we're trying to do something similar, trying to bring the elbows into the side a little bit, which will help the chest to come up and it'll help allow the shoulder to drop a little bit. In the bench press, we're trying to do the same thing. We're trying to keep the elbows in close to the body. We're trying to let the shoulder blades stay down. You don't want the shoulder blades to be up at all. You're going to try to get a good arch to the mid upper back area. When you bring the weight down, as soon as you get to your chest, you're going to forcefully throw your elbows back out. Some people will have an issue with their elbows flaring, the elbows flaring out and stuff like that. A lot of those issues can simply be corrected by using the right amount of weight. I think a lot of times it's simply people going too heavy too fast, or people going too heavy too often even. If it's a glaring problem that happens all the time, there's other ways to fix it with dumbbells and a bunch of other things you can do. But basically, most of the mistakes that we see can be smoothed over. There are assistance exercises, there are specialty movements that you can do, but you can simply just find weights that you can move better and not necessarily always worry about going heavier. Worry about doing a lift better. When you do a lift in the gym, whoever you're training with for the day should say, fuck, that looked easy, that looked really good. Rather than them being like, oh man, you don't have anything left. You want to always leave a little bit. You do want to train hard. You do want to feel like you really worked for it. But at the same time, you shouldn't be smashing yourself so hard that you can't recover from it. Mike and I talk about this all the time. We see a lot of different things on the internet with people lifting, and I think it causes a lot of confusion because what you guys are usually looking at are people that are kind of superhuman, people that have built themselves up for decades off of the internet. Now they're on the internet and they have a following, and you're seeing these just huge lifts go down. And what you may not know is that these guys, I would put them in the category as being professional. They're basically professional athletes in a way. This is kind of what they do for a living. Maybe they don't make money doing it, but this is what they do all the time. They spend a lot of time doing it. They've been doing it for over a decade, and therefore their form and their precision on every rep of every single set that they do is on point all the time. And so that's the stuff that you sometimes don't get to see. So you see someone bang out 705 or something in a deadlift for a couple reps. You may not have saw them, working for weeks and weeks and weeks, because who wants to post 6 sets of 8 with 405? It's like kind of boring. It's not long enough for the grams, or it's too long for the grams to be able to post it on there. So a lot of times you're not seeing some of the hard work that goes behind some of these bigger lifts. People are really only sharing the bigger lifts, and I think it sometimes can confuse people. But keep in mind, if your form is good, if you're lifting precisely, and if you're lifting on point all the time, you'll be able to do the lift more frequently. Your body will adapt to it faster. But if you're squatting like shit every time you squat, every time you get to 3 plates, you keep getting rounded over, and you do 3 sets of 3 for the day on that, that's 9 reps that you just got, rounded over on. How well are you going to recover from that? What's your bench press going to be like the next day or the day after that? What's your deadlift going to feel like a few days following that? Probably going to feel like crap. And then the workouts start to really bleed into each other. It's almost like a lifting hangover that kind of never ends. Back's always sore. This is always tight. This always feels like it's going to tear. Everything's just kind of always feeling a little bit like crap. You shouldn't really feel that way. You do have to train with intensity. You do have to get a lot of work in when you go to the gym, but you shouldn't be so worn down all the time. You should be actually feeling good from most of your workouts. Now, if you're getting ready for competition, there may be a month, there may be a 6-week block where you're really going after it, and maybe you're going harder than ever, so maybe you do feel like shit for a little bit. But a lot of times that's, something that you're trying to accumulate. You're trying to teach your body to adapt to that, so when you go to the meet, the weights are easy to lift. We're gonna walk over here to the bench press. Sure. They got your max on there. Look at that.
Not impress anybody today. Don't want to make Brett feel bad about his bench.
So again, you want to develop a routine. You want to develop a rhythm. When you watch, I'll use basketball as an example again. You watch, some of the best free throw shooters of all time shoot a basket, and they'll dribble it 2 or 3 times. They'll spin the ball a couple times, and then they'll shoot it, right? A lot of those guys have been asked why they do that, and they'll say it's to feel the weight of the ball. That doesn't really make sense, right? They've been playing basketball forever. They should know how much the ball weighs, right? They could probably just shoot it. But no, it's to get them into a routine. It's to make them comfortable. They'll dribble it the same exact way every time, whether there's 5 guys in practice watching them or whether they're in front of 50,000 people screaming and yelling at them trying to distract them, and they'll still make the shot. So same thing with powerlifting. We want to try to develop good habits, and we want to try to develop a routine. Sit on the bench the same way every time, lay back on the bench the same way every time, grab the bar the same way every time. You want to do everything in a similar fashion all the time as much as you possibly can. So what Mike likes to do is he likes to get above the bench for a little bit here. Back is flat. We always teach everybody at my gym, I always teach everybody to lay flat when they lay on the bench. The reason being is this would probably be the worst position to bench press in. It's going to have a large range of motion for his shoulders. It's going to compromise his shoulders. He could possibly get injured that way. Not a great way to bench press. So as he did on the deadlift, the sumo deadlift, he started with that rounded back. He's like, all right, this is a shitty position. This is the worst one to be in. And then he straightened it out by using the barbell. Same thing here. We're going to utilize the barbell to get into position. So Mike, he started above the bench. He slid himself down. He made sure each shoulder blade was tucked into the bench. You're trying to almost think about kind of screwing your shoulder blades into the bench press. If you just kind of have your arms like this, that's kind of how your arms should be when you bench press, except for they got to go this way. Simply just turning your hands over is probably the easiest way for me to tell you how to kind of mimic where your elbow should be when you're going to do a bench press. So he's got his shoulder blades set. Now he's ready to take the weight. When you're taking the weight out of the rack, I prefer that someone lifts off for me, but either way, whether you do that or not, you always want to kind of pull the weight out of the rack rather than just lift it out of the rack. So it should look a little bit like this. He's going to pull the weight out of the rack with his lats, and now he's ready to bench. You try to bring the weight down to the same spot every time. Elbows are coming in close, and he's driving the weight up and back. The weight is hitting him in the sternum, right below his giant nipples, and then the weight is being pushed back up, kind of the upper pec area, almost like the neck. in terms of like leg drive, I first of all think it's overrated. I think people make too big a deal about it. Same thing with like the groove. Everyone's like, oh, I misgrooved it. It's like, no, you missed the weight because it's fucking heavy. That's what happened. That's what I saw. You missed the weight because it's heavy. Obviously, you do want to try to reinforce your form and technique all the time. But again, it's hard to do that with maximal weights. All we're trying to do with our legs is we're trying to push ourselves off the bench. So once he gets in position, he's trying to just push himself this way. That's pretty much it. He's just trying, his legs are flexed, legs are tight, but we're not trying to do anything fancy. This isn't going to add 50 pounds to your bench. We've seen some remarkable bench presses from guys with no legs. I saw Brandon Lilly like a couple weeks ago bench 565 for 3 reps, and he just had knee surgery. He's not even able to use his legs all that much. I've benched some pretty heavy weights doing like a Larson press. Adrian Larson is a great example of that too. He can't even get his feet to touch the ground, and he's able to press almost 600 pounds. So the leg drive thing is a little overrated, a little overdone, but you do want your legs to be tight, you want them to be stable, and you want to try to be forcing yourself kind of towards the spotter or towards the hooks here. One more thing about it too is you want to actually try to force your knees out a little bit, just like in the squat, just like in a sumo pull. A little bit similar, not too much different than even a conventional deadlift. You want to try to force your knees out a little bit too. The reason is once we collapse here, we start to collapse through here a little bit as well. The knee should be lower than the hip. The knee should be lower than the hip. The main reason for that is just to get your belly up in there, get your stomach, your chest up in the air. If you don't, I see some people that get on their toes and their hips are super tight. This is not a great way to bench press. You'll have no stability. That's when leg drive can be kind of an issue. It's just when your body's so tight that you can't use your legs at all and they're just in a weird, funky position. There's a stance for everything that you do, whether you're powerlifting, whether you're boxing, whether you're doing MMA, whether you're playing basketball, playing football. There's a stance for everything that you do, and you want to make sure that each time you get ready and prepared for a lift that you're in the correct stance. Does anybody have any questions on the deadlift that we went over or the bench press? We can kind of hammer some of those out now. This is when nobody has a question. Oh!
One of the things that we're seeing on the internet now, especially as people are getting ready for the Arnold, on the bench, they're just unracking and doing super heavy holds.
Right.
They're not pressing, they're just unracking and doing heavy holds.
Yeah.
Purpose for that? Do you see that fitting in somewhere?
Yeah, the
What's
purpose.
your thought there?
Yeah, so the purpose for something like that can sometimes be to handle more weight than you're actually going to bench press. I haven't seen the video specifically that you're talking about, but I would imagine that they're probably trying to do some sort of overload, just kind of hold the weight. If they're unracking it themselves and holding the weight, that's an exercise in and of itself, just because it's kind of challenging to get the weight out of the hooks. That would be almost considered like a tricep movement in a way. But really they're trying to get their central nervous system to adapt to what they're going to do in the competition. So sometimes you'll see the practice of somebody may walk a 900-pound squat out of a rack, but in the contest they squat 850. People are just kind of seeking like a little bit of overload training. It's a great tool for your mind to see, maybe somebody's got this hurdle. Every time they see 4 plates, they have a heart attack and they can't get over, they can't bench it. And so maybe their training partner or coach has them hold 400 pounds in their hands for several seconds so they know what it feels like. The other thing with stuff like that is just, I think that, each coach is a little different, and what you're always looking for is what's going to give you progress. So people will they'll literally make up some weird different movements that you'll see from time to time. And the only thing that matters is progress. So if you do something weird, maybe Mike gets on a kick and starts doing tons of good mornings. Then he goes to a competition and gets a 40-pound PR. It doesn't really necessarily mean that everyone should be doing good mornings. It means that he found an exercise that really worked well for him. And it's possible it could work for other people too. But if you have progress, if somebody says, hey, I do good mornings every day and I pulled 800 pounds and it worked really well for me, well, that's progress, and no one can really refute progress. Maybe the science shows something different, or maybe this shows something different, or that shows something different. But if you're progressing, if you're making them gains with a Z, then you are kicking ass and you are heading in the right direction, even if you're doing something that's a little unconventional, doing something a little different. Another question?
Okay, I'm going to preface this by saying this might be the dumbest question you've ever heard.
I'll be the judge of that.
I've been doing some research and I can't really find a whole lot of reliable information on it.
I'm not a reliable source.
Well, I figured I'd ask. I tend to have problems in my bench press with my butt coming up off the bench, like at the very, so like I pause it on my chest and everything's fine, and as soon as I pop it off, my butt pops up about an inch and then goes back down, and I finish the lift and everything's fine. But if you look at the video, my butt's popping up like this.
Can you have somebody maybe just distract the judges real quick? For that half second?
Bribe the judges.
Yeah.
A lot of them are my friends.
Hey, look, there's $100.
But I can't figure out how to fit. I've done some stuff where I've worked on like widening my stance, like bringing my legs out a little bit more, so I don't have quite as much drive, but it almost feels like I'm pushing too much from my legs.
There's a bunch of things you can do. Let me see, who's someone tall in here? There's not anybody really that tall. He's pretty tall. I want to just come up here for a second. So each person is going to look a little different when they're on the bench press. Oh, he's a lot taller than I thought. Better behave myself. Wow. Each person's going to look a little different when they're on the bench press. Women typically have long legs and longish arms in comparison to their torso and in comparison to men. And then plus they're just, women aren't going to be as thick as most guy power lifters and stuff like that. So they're going to look a lot different on the bench press. And then people that are taller are going to look a little different on the bench press. So if you can just sit down here and then lay back. Watch your head when you lay back there. There you go. So you can see, he's got a lot of leg under him. And so some tricks that we can do, if this was a problem for somebody like himself, if his butt kept shooting up, we can just simply have him, widen his feet out, and he could push his feet this way a little bit as well. And now he's just got less leg under him. And so with less leg under him, he shouldn't be able to really pop his hips off the bench. So that's just an illustration of it. Let's have you try it as well.
Take my heels off.
Another option actually is to wear a shoe with a heel on it.
I don't know if I want to wear those.
Yeah, those are pretty fancy. But if you wear like an Olympic lifting shoe, sometimes that can help you with a little bit better contact to the floor.
So this is my normal.
Want to show a stretch real quick, Sven?
Yeah, let's go ahead and point your toes outward a little bit. You'd probably be more comfortable that way. And then go ahead and move your feet forward more.
See, when I do this, I lose tightness.
Well, you might have to start
I
that
might
way.
have to try it, but
yeah,
it just...
Move your feet in a little closer then. Try to find kind of like a happy medium.
But see, then
it feels like your butt can still come up.
Are you trying to drive up or are you trying to drive out? Like your feet?
I'm trying to prevent...
trying to drive up or out?
I'm trying to prevent my butt from coming off the bench.
Yeah, so
if
you drive out, that'll actually flex your butt.
Yeah, there you go. And then push it that away, not this way.
I can't unrack that.
No, you don't need to. Force your knees out. There you go, like that.
Oh, that hurts.
It should.
Yeah.
Most of these lifts should be kind of uncomfortable. After a period of time, you'll make yourself a little more comfortable doing them. But a bench press, again, as I mentioned earlier, I really do think it's like kind of the most taxing. Obviously, a deadlift's going to be painful just due to the amount of muscle it requires to do it, and squat the same way. But a bench press is kind of the one that people don't really understand can beat the shit out of you too. Your butt should actually be a little bit sore from bench pressing if you're doing it correctly, because you should be flexing your butt. That's a good way to just make your ass a little bigger, is to actually flex it. If you're flexing it the whole time, then your hip flexors will be kind of in a stretch position, and you won't be able to like release them, and you won't be able to drive your butt off the bench. So I think if you go with your feet a little bit further this way, and if, like he mentioned, if you force your knees out, I think you should be all good.
Another thing you can do is stretching your hips a little bit. We always talk about like all three movements are all like entire body movements. People think you're squatting, you're just working your legs. Like you need to warm up your shoulders before you squat if you're going to get in the best position possible for that day. Same thing with the bench. Stretching your hip flexors, if you know the couch stretch. If not, Google it. If not, mobilitywod.com or mobilitywod on YouTube's. Yeah, we can try this guy too. Just another simple stretch. So you just kind of want to open up your hips a little bit. Also warming up, something people don't do a lot of. We go to gyms and everyone's like hanging out on foam rollers. Where's Lou? Lou hangs out on a foam roller for 45 minutes before he even touches a weight. Is he on one right now? No, he's not. Lou, you're the worst. I knew it.
I would imagine when you go heavier too, that your hips are probably, your knees are probably caving inward a little bit. And then what's allowing you to get your butt off the bench is you're able to kind of flex your butt in that position when your knees are in. So as he was mentioning, if you're driving out hard, your butt shouldn't be able to come off the bench.
Yeah, just stay easy. Hip stretch, just get into a lunge position. No right or wrong way. I like to keep this foot straight ahead of me and just driving those glutes forward. I'll just open up all of this. So then when you are in a little bit more of an arched position, or not, even for guys that have their feet forward, the tighter you are here, the harder it is to flex your glutes. Yep. So the more we can light this up, get more into that position.
If your butt is flexed the whole time and you're forcing your knees out, you shouldn't be able to really move from there. Okay. That should be good. Another question.
Issue with my upper back unraveling with heavy weight. When it's submaximal, it's not an issue. Pretty much I'm able to stay tight, but as soon as weight gets heavy, I'm pretty much rounding my shoulders forward, and I constantly get a lot of shoulder nagging pains or injuries. What suggestion would you have on making sure that stays tight and still keeping my range of motion short?
Right.
As that weight gets heavier.
Sometimes what I see people do, I would just, for lack of a better term, just call it over pressing. I see sometimes people, this is kind of like, for some reason, it reminds me of like high school football rooms, because I used to coach some high school kids, and they'd always like try to like overly impress you with how much they pop the weight up, especially at the top. They'd kind of get stuck here. You guys probably seen that a lot in the squat, where somebody gets caught midway through their squat, and at the top they think they're cool and they like pop the weight off their shoulders or something. But you always want to stay connected to the weight throughout the entire range of motion. And as you go to press, there's no reason for you to try to accelerate, so hard that you're kind of getting here. And I think that's what probably happens to a lot of people, is rather than keeping their shoulder blades retracted the entire time and pressing with their pecs and their triceps and their lats, they're kind of pressing a little bit with their shoulder. So if it's happening to you on repetitions, then you also need to make sure that your shoulders stay screwed into the bench the entire time. I see people just kind of making that mistake of just kind of over pressing, like they'll press up and out, and they'll kind of press a little further than is even necessary. And then it's hard to really recover after that. Once you've kind of already messed up and you got some heavy weight on there, if you're doing a set or 2 or 3, it'll just kind of continue to get worse. One of the best ways to prevent yourself from lifting like an idiot is to just slow down. Just slow down. Make sure everything's intact. Like if you're stuck, even if you've been lifting for 10 years, doesn't matter how long you've been lifting for, if you're stuck on something, just try to take a light weight, take 50% of your max, and just slow the damn thing down and make sure you have the proper sensations. Make sure you got the proper feel of each movement and how it should be executed. In the case of like a bench press, probably the number one way to clean somebody up, if they're not already practicing this, is to use pauses. Use a 2 or 3 second pause. If you're gonna do a legitimate pause and not let the weight really sink into you, that's preferred. I'd rather see people stay a little tighter rather than just kind of blobbing out and letting that weight really sink into them, because then they'll sink and they'll heave, ass comes up, and all kinds of other crazy things happen from that position. But try some pauses, try slowing some stuff down. Recently I've hit 3 PRs in the deadlift. I've been powerlifting since I was about 13 years old, and I'm 39 now, so you do the math, it's a lot of years of powerlifting. I was still able to hit some PRs simply by just going back and working on some issues that I've had with my butt coming up and my shoulders rounding over. I just simply started slowing down the deadlifts, and I started to make a lot of progress. So anytime you're stuck, anytime something's not going the right way, just simply slow it down. Whatever program you're on, just lower the percentages a little bit. I know everyone's got their own little special thing that they do. And even with that, I think you always want to make sure the execution is there. I think with Jim Wendler's book, 531, I think so many people missed the whole entire point of the book. And the main focus is that you never miss a lift and that you have a lot of fun with your training. When you're doing sets of 5, it's really something you can do for a set of 8. When you're doing sets of 3, it's really something you can do for a set of 5, and so on. And you do work yourself towards PRs, and you do work yourself towards gym maxes and stuff like that. But you always want to be on the safer side and keep making progress. You always want to leave a little room. If you're a competitor, if someone that competes in powerlifting, there's not a lot of great reasons to go for some heavy PRs in the gym. Occasionally, if your strength has gotten to be exponentially better than it's been in the past, and maybe that's just the way it is. Maybe now you're doing triples with what you used to max out with, and so maybe you're starting to hit some bigger numbers. But in general, the weights that you lift at the gym should probably be, maybe get up to the 95% range as opposed to what you actually perform and do on the platform. I think Chad Wesley Smith he wrote an article about being about 7 to 10% stronger on the platform than he was in training, and a lot of guys follow similar protocols. They'll do sets of 4, sets of 6, sets of 3, sets of 2. They don't really get into a lot of crazy singles, and if they do singles, they'll do a lot of volume with those singles, might do 5 sets of 1 and just use 90%, and they're working on fine-tuning their form and technique with those heavier weights. Next question.
You mentioned recovery. How do you incorporate a deload in, getting ready for a meet? You want to stay intense the whole time.
Yeah.
6 weeks, 10 weeks. How do you incorporate deloading into a meet prep?
It's pretty common for most people to back off a little bit after about 3 weeks of training. So they'll do a 3-week block, and the 4th week they'll pull back a little bit. Preparing for a contest is still no different. It's just that you're going to have that last week is just going to be, your normal deload week. So if you have a contest that's 12 weeks away, you would go through approximately 3 of those training blocks, because every 4th week would be a quote-unquote deload, or however you want to word it. You're backing off. You're not going as intense as you were. Maybe the percentages are backed off. Each person has kind of their own way of doing that. You want to add to that, Mike?
Yeah, just like there's a million programs that work, and there's a million different styles of training, different ways to prep for a meet or kind of peak, I think is what you're asking about, right? How do you perform your best on the platform before, Mark, a little more experienced, obviously a little bit stronger than me. He might take a full 7 days off of kind of everything. He might take his heavy deadlift maybe 2 weeks out, maybe his heavy squat 10 days out, maybe his last heavy bench 7 days out, where I'm handling a little bit less weight, I'm a little less experienced. I might handle my heaviest squat 6-7 days out, heaviest deadlift. Does that make sense? So kind of it depends by person. There's also guys that'll take, Brett, when did you take your biggest deadlift?
14 days out.
Yeah, 14 days out, right? And Brett's one of the best deadlifters at his body weight in the world, So it all just kind of depends on not only experience, because then you also don't want to lose your groove. I know Mark made fun of groove earlier, but you don't want to not practice your sport. So doing something maybe 10 days out, 7 days out, 6 days out, 5 days out, like a 3 sets of 3, 60, 70%, something like that, just to kind of find your rhythm. And then that's part of just competing and experience, right? I mean, Michael Jordan did something before a game, before Larry Bird did before a game. Sometimes guys like to shoot around for an hour. Some guys like to do nothing. So the more you compete, or the more you test your 1 rep max, the more you can learn about yourself.
As I mentioned earlier with progress, it's a similar thing. He said, base it off your history too. Like if you have competed before, what's worked well for you. If you don't have that much experience, then all you can do is go off of what's about to happen. You'll have to kind of wait and kind of see how things unfold. Mike works with some of the guys in our gym, and he'll program for them, and they'll get worried about, because Mike he likes to use sub-maximal weights in the gym, just basically meaning what, you're staying under 90% approximately in the gym?
Until a month out.
Yeah, until about a month out from the contest. And you're not really ever hitting the weight that you're going to do in the contest. You're only doing that on the platform. And so some guys will get worried, but you got to try to trust in the program that you're about to do, and then learn from it. Like, did it work or did it not work? Did you put your best effort into it? And you got to always make sure of that too. Make sure that you did follow through with what you're supposed to do. Make sure you gave it an honest shot. But if you gave it an honest shot and it didn't work out the way that you wanted it to, maybe you got to go back and tweak some things. And that's how you learn. Write things down. Ed Cohen said that he was like a madman. He's like a man possessed. Every time he had an idea or thought about a different number or how he's going to do it or whatever, he'd just write it down. And so he had like tons and tons of papers all over the place, little assignment notebooks and stuff like that all over the place, with stuff written down on it that he was going to try to do or try to implement for the next training cycle. Other questions?
The organization I lift in, they let you raise your heels off the ground on bench. I've always benched off the balls of my feet for that reason. Do you recommend switching to a flat foot? Would that be beneficial?
You just go with what works. Go with what feels best to you. I've seen people bench world records both ways, with their heels off the ground and their heels on the ground. So I can't say definitively that one is better than the other. It's an individual basis. Like if you're ever doing something and it's hurting something, then that's when you got to kind of look at it too. Like if it hurts your knee to do it a certain way, then probably don't do it that way. So yeah, just go based off of like what feels best to you. Next question.
Specific to you, because I know that you had some elbow pain. I've been lifting, benching heavier, and just more consistently. My elbows have been flaring up.
Yeah.
So it's kind of holding back what I can do for triceps. And the triceps are huge for bigger bench.
Just how do you manage it, basically?
Yeah, basically.
Well, I gave him a body slam one day. This is my brother Chris, by the way, the director of Bigger, Stronger, Faster, ladies and gentlemen. And prescription tugs. I gave him a body slam, right? But then I think I telegraphed it, waited too long. I celebrated a little bit, then I hit the ropes and I went to drop an elbow on him. He rolled out of the way. Therefore, the elbow's all banged up now. True story, by the way. But, I mean, seriously, like how to deal with injuries is you're going to always have something that's bugging you going into a competition. You're going to have always something that's nagging. All you can really try to do is to manage it, and that might be a little different for each person. But you can go with something real simple. You can use some aspirin or ibuprofen or some ice. There's some things that you can do like that. They're just real simple, common, old school ways of doing some things. You can try also to back way off of everything that hurts. Anything that gives you like pain over a certain level, let's just say normally your elbow's at like a 4, and when you lift it's at like a 7, then don't do anything that gets you in the pain range of like a 5, something like that. Like don't do anything for a little while until it starts to maybe feel better. Try working out the opposite muscle. The tricep is hurting. Maybe try working on the bicep, try some stretching. There's a lot of good information on mobilitywod.com. You can check out that website. It's Kelly Starrett's website. He's got a lot of good ways of kind of fixing yourself up. Once you start to get into, wrapping up your elbow, and, I sell a product called the compression cuff, which is a great product. It does help you with your elbow pain. But once you get into a lot of that kind of stuff, then you're really sort of just masking the pain that's already there. So you still have to address the pain that's there. It's not like you put these things on and they're going to heal you. They're going to allow you to train, and you want to utilize equipment as much as you need. Anytime you're hurt or anytime, let's say your lower back is tight, it's probably wise to put on a belt a little earlier in your training session. With any of the tools that you have, knee wraps, knee sleeves, any of those things, you're going to want to utilize them a ton when you're going through an injury, when you have inflammation, you have a problem. But again, you're going to have to continually go back and try to figure out what the hell is actually wrong with it. So if it's something that's been nagging you for a while, I would recommend just trying to get it checked out by a doctor, get an MRI, an X-ray, because tendonitis can lead to your tendon actually eroding and tearing, and you can end up with a much bigger problem. We had a guy in our gym who had some elbow pain for a while, and he tore his tricep and his pec in the same lift. So you have to really be kind of careful when you have these little things that are kind of rearing their ugly head over and over again. It's a message to you like, hey, this thing hurts, let's try to get it worked on. But try some of those other things first, try to get it massaged, try to dig in there with a lacrosse ball and some of those things. Those things are really effective. But ultimately, if it's still bothering you, go to a doctor. Next question.
So what would you suggest for, stabilizing the arms, specifically in the bench? Like accessory work. Bench is like my worst lift, and I have a tendency when I get upwards towards like 85% or more, when even with a lift off, my arms will shake.
Right.
What would you recommend to fix that?
Shaky arm syndrome. It's a tough one. Doing some unilateral stuff, some dumbbell bench pressing, even some hammer strength, some movements like that can be really beneficial. If you bench twice a week, then I would incorporate the dumbbells twice a week as well. Have one day where you're pushing them a little heavier, one day where you're doing them lighter for higher reps. But most of the time, like issues like that, somebody's shaking quite a bit in a squat, someone's shaking quite a bit in a deadlift, a lot of times those issues will go away when you go back and work on your technique and your form with submaximal weights. So like, let's say, how much can you bench press?
About 330.
About 330. So let's say that every time you go above like 275, your arms are shaking, right? I would just kind of stay under that weight and work on some repetitions and keep kind of building. Like you're trying to build a stronger foundation so you're more stable. And over a period of time, Maybe your arms always shake. Maybe that's just you. Each person's different. My arms shake, they just shake with higher weights, but they've always done that. They've done it since the beginning of my lifting career. They've always kind of shook when I was doing a bench press. I always round over when I squat. It's just depending on how strong I am, I'll just round over with heavier weights. I've always gone back and tried to work on the form and technique, but it's just when you keep working on the form and technique, you're going to keep getting stronger, but more than likely, you're still going to see some of those same issues come back up. Mike has a little bit of trouble with his deadlift lockout. Odds are, like, he'll lock out heavier stuff, he'll still hit PRs, but every time he goes for something really big, he still might have a little trouble with the lockout. Next question.
I noticed, like, some people when they bench, a lot of times they'll put their feet under them, so other people put their feet out. Do you think it matters?
No, it doesn't matter. Just go with whatever feels good. Next question.
Yeah, how would you specifically incorporate using the slingshot for the bench when in programming when coming back from an injury?
This guy's obviously
why
a
you
plant.
ask?
This guy's obviously a plant. The slingshot is like my third child in some ways. I still think it's kind of underutilized by a lot of people, bodybuilders and even powerlifters to some extent. We use it quite a bit in my gym, probably almost twice a week. But the way that I always suggest using it is don't worry about changing up your program. Don't worry about like trying to do something scientifically crazy with the slingshot. And don't even really worry about like, going so nuts with it that you hit, 110 pounds over your max. That's not really the point of the product. The product is to protect yourself. The product is to allow you to have better form. And it is to just kind of keep the shoulders in a better and safe position. But we utilize it very simple. All we do is whatever we did for the day, we'll use it for like the last 3 sets. So if Mike did 4 sets of 6 reps for the day, he might use a slingshot for an extra 3 sets of 3. If you want to keep it even less complicated than that, rather than even just changing up the reps and sets, just keep them the same and just do an additional 3 sets. If you did 3 sets of 10 for the day, do 3 sets of 10 with the slingshot. Add 20 pounds or so until your arms give out, until you can't do it anymore. So we try to really simplify it, keep it easy, keep it simple. If we're doing high reps for the day, maybe when we get in the slingshot, might do high reps with it on that. And if we go heavy on it, then we might do the same thing and just go heavier with the slingshot on. The slingshot, I always prefer people to pause a little bit. It does give you a nice boost out of the bottom. It does allow you to lift about 50 pounds more. It is fun to like overload and to handle something heavy and to build some confidence, but there's really no reason to do a sloppy bench press. Just because you're in a slingshot doesn't give you a free pass to have shitty form. So you still want to pause the weight, you still want to press it aggressively and still have good solid form. Next question.
Yeah, when you guys are training for bench press specifically, how often do you recommend going touch and go versus like a competition pause in training?
So again, that would be based off experience. If you go to a competition and you fall flat on your face in the bench press, your bench press really sucks because you didn't practice pausing, then maybe you have to go back in your training and work on pausing more often. For myself, it's never really been an issue. I sort of pseudo pause rep almost every time. I do like, I guess you'd call it like a half pause. It may not be like an official pause. Maybe in competition they might sit me there a little bit longer. But I just highly recommend that everyone tries to train in a similar fashion to the way that you're asked to lift on the platform. If you're going to do touch and go, or you're going to do a bodybuilding style bench press where you're maybe not locking out all the way, to me a lot of those things are assistance movements. You kind of just think about like in the squat, like it's super unacceptable, especially on the internet, to do a high squat, right? So you kind of just view it that way. Like you're not really going to do a lot of high squats in your training, and if you did a high squat, maybe it was for a very specific purpose of keeping tension on your quads, or it may have a specific goal that you're trying to achieve, or maybe you're trying to overload. But again, in the bench press, I think you're just better off, utilizing a pause most of the time anyway, since that's what you're asked to do in a contest. Let's take one more question. Uh-oh. It's my lawyer, my turn.
So obviously you've kind of gone through like a progression with like your gym over the years. Started something small, now you got something like huge. Let's say you're a business owner, or you just like, I don't know, team leader, you're getting training partners together. What advice do you have if you're kind of getting a team together and kind of building a team where you're going to be doing competitions and kind of pushing each other and keeping everyone on the same page? And
I always say inspire, don't instruct. Training advice. Oh, here's how you keep your shoulders on the bench press and stuff. But you also want to be able to inspire and motivate people, and that's just a good trait of a leader. It's something that I don't know if I can really tell you how to do it. I can't tell you how to make $1 million either. I just invented a good product and it started selling really well, and I just happen to be good at promoting it. And I happen to hire people that are good at helping me promote it. The thing is, you want to try to inspire people. You're better off trying to inspire somebody to get up off their couch and get into the gym and start training, rather than just focusing in on, oh, were my knees out on the squat or those kinds of things. Those are all important. They're all things that have to be done. But at this point, they're almost becoming common knowledge because we spread the word so much through the internet, and we're able to give our message out to so many people so many ways. But if you look at things that are popular on the internet, motivational videos on YouTube and stuff like that have way more views than how to deadlift, because people don't really care. They do. They want to know, oh, fuck, man, my back hurts every time I deadlift. But they also want to hear, fuck you and fuck your elbow. They want to hear that kind of stuff. They want to be motivated and inspired to do something better than they're currently doing. The best way to do that is to just simply lead by example. A couple years ago, I retired from powerlifting. I did a 1901 raw total and just, basically said, all right, well, that's enough. I competed single ply and multi ply, and I started lifting as a kid, and I had some records and I did some cool stuff, and I just feel good. I'm done. I'm done being fat, done being as bloated as I need to be to achieve some of these lifts. I pushed the envelope as hard as I could. I got all the way up to 330 pounds to try to lift as much as I possibly could. Squatted over 1,080 and did a bunch of cool stuff, bench 854. But at that point, once I kind of stopped, my gym sort of stopped a little bit too. Even with Mike and some of the other guys lifting and stuff, if I'm the leader, then I got to be on the front lines with a gun in my hand too. If I'm supposed to be the guy in charge, the guy that's asking people to do X, Y, and Z, then my ass better be on the line just as much as theirs. And so that's the only way I can really tell you to inspire people, is just by doing stuff. Mike mentioned it earlier. When I started the first super training, it wasn't like I took a loan from the bank or anything like that. I just started making it happen. I fantasized about it a lot. I thought about it a lot. Every time I drive past a facility, I was like, man, I should figure out a way to rent that place out. I didn't have any money. I was a bum. When I first met my wife, I didn't have a driver's license. I didn't have a car. I guess those two go hand in hand. I didn't have a bank account. I was off the fucking grid until I was, almost 30 years old. So it takes a long time to kind of figure those things out, but you use those life experiences to be able to lead people, to be able to help bring people up, help bring people to the next level. And I feel like to me, it's my job to try to bring as many people up to the next level as I possibly can. Does that help?